Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope everyone is doing well out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day. Great week out there so far. Thank you all for joining me this morning as we talk about the weather and what's going to happen weather-wise for your Wednesday. After we discuss that, take advantage of those timestamps. We are going to give you some very detailed information on this pattern change. And really, we know this pattern change is coming, right? You know, we've been talking it to death over the last, I would say, 7 to 10 days. We know this is coming now. It's really just trying to figure out, are we going to have any kind of winter storm with it? You know, because just because it gets cold, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get winter weather out of it. So I am watching one, maybe two storm signals that could produce winter weather. And really, this first one we're going to talk about, I think has a high chance of happening. It's just trying to figure out who's going to see the winter weather side of this and who's just going to see the rain out of this. So that'll be a heavy topic in the videos going forward. You know, that's kind of what we do on this channel. We kind of look at the pattern and kind of talk about it. And then as we start to see a storm signal on the models and things start to really kind of group up into one time period of a day or two, we can really start to talk about this and eventually get into a forecast period where we talk about those details, how much you can get. And we're not quite there yet. I would say we're not even close, but we're starting to really kind of iron down a time frame to really watch for some sort of storm system early next week. And then a little bit after that, I'm watching something also. So we'll break down a lot of information for you folks. I do apologize for not really having a video over the last few evenings. Just been taking a break. Don't want to talk about this to death to the point where it's almost annoying. But, you know, just personally been taking a break too, a little bit of a breather. January was very successful, but it was a grind, that's for sure. So, that's why you really haven't seen a video in the last few evenings, but I will definitely have a video this evening, break it down. Thank you all for the prayers yesterday. They were answered. I'll just leave it at that. They were certainly answered. So thank you all so much for that. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like, and if any of you have anything that I can pray about or anybody else can pray about, please put those in the comments below so we can pray over it, everybody can pray over it, and we can look out for you, and more importantly, God can look out for you. So let's get rocking and rolling. So as you can tell on the radar, a lot of just scattered about moisture, nothing really consolidated, nothing that looks substantial by any means. We continue to get a feed of moisture into Southern California. We had a tornado, a confirmed tornado, I believe, outside of San Diego yesterday. Seeing the video from it, it looked like a tornado. I'm not sure if they confirmed it. Pretty wild, pretty rare for this part of the country for sure, but we got a lot of moisture scattered about. Some of these areas are not actually seeing it hit the ground. A lot of virga action on radar out there. Virga meaning moisture is indicated on radar, but it's drying up before it actually hits the surface. So we got some rain, another kind of weaker storm system entering Northern California. And, you know, you just continue to kind of get a moist flow into the Pacific Northwest. The eastern U.S., for the most part, is pretty quiet. A little bit of moisture up here in Canada, but pretty quiet in the eastern U.S. in general. Storm Prediction Center, just a general risk of thunderstorms out there for now. We still continue to have a risk of thunderstorms in Southern California. Who knows, might get some thunder snow in certain areas. Kind of more of a convective nature of this moisture out west instead of like more of just a solid, solid rain and solid snow, kind of rounds of heavier burst of rain and snow instead of just a moderate rain for hours on end. But, you know, there is a chance of some thunderstorms. We'll talk about this in the middle of the country. But severe weather, nothing is expected. But you never know. It could still happen. I believe there was just a general risk of thunderstorms in Southern California yesterday. And we got a tornado. As far as flash flooding, this is the good news. Things have dropped off substantially. Not really expecting any kind of big day with flash flooding, but you continue to have, you know, still a threat of flash flooding, I would believe, just with the runoff, with all the rain that you've seen, probably, you know, the rivers that are overflowing past their banks for sure. So definitely be aware of this out here. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Central and eastern U.S., very quiet. Wind advisories up for New Mexico, areas of Texas, Oklahoma, even several counties in Kansas. Dense fog still plaguing areas of the country. We got winter weather advisories up for a good chunk of Montana, areas of the Dakotas and Wyoming, basically the northern plains, ahead of a storm system that will strengthen across the northern sections of the country. Will deliver a little bit in the way of some accumulating snow for the northern plains. Across the Rockies, we're going to get a lot of snow. In fact, there's some high wind watches, so maybe some wind-driven snow, maybe some brief blizzard conditions are possible. But there's areas of like the southern ranges of Colorado that could get feet of snow for sure. So a lot of snow already falling and will continue to fall over the next few days for sure into the weekend. But this is what it looks like out there as far as watches and warnings. Let's talk about the southeast as far as moisture. Not a whole lot going on. This pesky low continues to kind of get lost out there in the Atlantic. But what it's doing is it's dragging down cooler air into the Carolinas, the southeast. So it's going to keep you guys pretty nippy today, including my neck of the woods. But as we move to about midday, nothing going on as far as moisture this afternoon, this evening, into the overnight hours. I mean, maybe some sprinkles, light rain gets going here in eastern Texas. But, as far as the southeast, there's no real weather expected today whatsoever. The northeast today, kind of the same thing, not a whole lot going on. A little bit of light snow, some flurries could make its way into the northern Adirondacks, northern sections up here of like New England. But I'm not expecting really any high impact weather for sure, and really no impactful weather whatsoever. But some flurries could make their way into like Vermont, New Hampshire, maybe even Maine. As we get into later this evening, don't let this catch you by surprise at all. I'm sure it won't. Snow does not catch you guys by surprise in February in this area of the country for sure. A little bit of more just kind of put together light snow as possible in northern Maine. But the rest of the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, portions of the Ohio Valley is very quiet out there today for sure. The South Central U.S., it's pretty quiet also. We got a little moisture. Well, I would say a lot of moisture that begins to move into New Mexico. A little thin line of showers could start to make its way into western Texas, Oklahoma. And then as we get into this afternoon, this evening, I'm talking about like 3, 4 p.m., we could get a better put together line of showers and even storms. That's why there is a general risk of thunderstorms as a low that we kind of been talking about on and off over the last several videos. Continues to move across the Rockies. Eventually, it ejects across the Rockies and moves northeast. And with it, you could have a line of storms that gets going. Now, you have a lack of ingredients that support severe weather, but that doesn't mean you couldn't get a strong storm or severe storm or two out of this. But I think it really gets going once it gets sort of east of the Colorado state line into Kansas. So could get a line of storms that gets going, sporadic rain showers on lower elevations, snow and higher elevations throughout the southern Rockies. And this line of showers will kind of fall apart because you lose the lift because this low pressure starts to move north. So, this line of storms that starts this afternoon, this evening, will fall apart as it gets later into the overnight hours through Kansas and Oklahoma. And by the time we get into the wee hours in the morning, it's not really a storm anymore. Could get a little lift of moisture into eastern Texas, like I mentioned in the southeast frame. And we could start the morning off kind of damp in areas of eastern Texas and Louisiana, maybe even southwest Arkansas as we're getting into our Thursday morning. All in all, not a very active feed of weather into the south central U.S. today. North central U.S., pretty quiet to start out your day. You continue to have pretty quiet weather. The most active weather that you've seen just about is just fog. So it hasn't been very active. But as you can see down here, low pressure begins to enter in the bottom portion of your screen, and as it does, some showers will lift and make their way through Nebraska, start to enter eastern South Dakota. Some shower activity will become widespread overnight in areas of Minnesota, as you can tell, especially western and the northern half of Minnesota. And this will continue, and then as we get into our Thursday morning, there's some chatter about some severe weather in the Midwest tomorrow. We'll talk more about that here in the coming videos, but with a strengthening low pressure, but there is a bit of a displacement from this low over here to this area right over here that we're watching. But there's some chatter in the weather community about maybe a little bit of a low top supercells that could get going here in the Midwest. We'll talk more on that if need to be here in the next couple videos. But as we're waking up tomorrow morning, we got a pretty stout low pressure riding over South Dakota. Could be enough cold air that wraps into this to maybe some heavy wet snow behind this. These are always tough setups. They really are. A little bit closer look at the northern plains where we are expecting a light snowfall event. As we get into this afternoon, this evening, look, it's more put together up here in northern Montana, northern sections of North Dakota. Down here, it's more sporadic in nature throughout the northern plains, Wyoming, the Dakotas. So you're probably going to pick up more snow up here in the northern sections of Montana, northeast Montana, northwest North Dakota. And then as we get into tomorrow morning, we have to watch for some really heavy wet snow in northern Nebraska, sort of central South Dakota, as this low continues to strengthen. And with a strengthening low, the tilt becoming more favorable for more dynamic weather, we could have a switch from rain to heavy wet snow that could surprise some people in this area of the country. But you continue just to get a lot of light to moderate snow throughout Montana throughout tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. And as this pulls into Canada, you could get some rain switching to some moderate to heavy snow in areas of North Dakota. We have to watch how this unfolds tomorrow. Snowfall between, though, now and Friday morning, they're not really throwing a bone for you folks in central South Dakota, areas of North Dakota. Really not. But they certainly do have it put together up here in northwest North Dakota. It's always a tongue twister in areas of Montana where you guys could get a few to several inches of snow in these areas of Montana. And it's really confined to the mountain ranges of Wyoming. Bighorn Mountains could certainly get several inches of snow off this event. But, of course, my folks down here in Colorado could get feet of snow depending on what mountain range you're nearby or the elevation you're at. Out west, it's finally starting to quiet down, even though you still got some pretty active weather. But another area of moisture is already making its way in this morning. This will be another situation: higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain, and could get some more rain all the way down to San Francisco today. Could be quite heavy, maybe a clap of thunder, maybe some lightning. But for the most part, we think this is just going to be some heavy rain, maybe some gusty winds. And then you just see across the Rockies, just scattered about heavier areas of snow. And if you notice, they're kind of splotchy, just scattered and smothered. Waffle House reference there. I like to throw that in there every once in a while. But you see it's not one big put together kind of chunk of snow, kind of like this up here. Just scattered bursts of snow. And these bursts of snow could be convective in nature. Heck, you could get, maybe some thunder snow. So we'll watch for that, but this will add up, and Sierra Nevada will get several inches of additional snow that you guys have already seen. And then, as you can tell, as we get into later tonight, some more rain could make its way down to Los Angeles, down to San Diego, and then you could get a little bit of moisture as we're waking up tomorrow morning in like Las Vegas. So we'll see what happens, and then you just continue to get this convective feed that grinds all the way down the California coastline, and snow continues to kind of fly around. And this is when it really could add up in the southern and central Rockies tomorrow as you guys continue to get more and more snow. Precipitation between now and Thursday morning, additional rainfall. Some of this is snow. But you take it all the way out to about Saturday morning. You guys between now and I would say the next day or so could get another inch of rain in San Diego, Los Angeles. Same thing for San Francisco. So definitely be aware of that. And then you look at the Rockies. A lot of snow beginning to add up. And then Denver could get something also as we get, I would say, to the later portion of this. This goes all the way out to Saturday morning. So definitely a lot of higher elevation snow that's on the way for these areas. Temperatures, cooler day in the southeast. The more you work your way into the deep south, temperatures will warm into the 60s and even 70s. Texas very warm today and well above average temperatures, all the way up into the upper Midwest. Any lingering snow you got on the ground in the Great Lakes region is really going to continue to take a hit. The Northeast, 20s and 30s for highs, hanging on to cooler air, but even some of these areas are above average, especially once you get into areas of Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia. So it continues to be a warm start to February. We were expecting this. Western U.S., warm across the plains, very, very warm. You're starting to run into some cooler air once you get into the northern plains, though. And in general, still slightly above average, I would say, across the Rockies, and hanging on to a little bit below average, around average temperatures in California. So moving forward here. We're going to look at our storm signal here. We're going to start off by looking at what are the models showing as far as storm systems of interest. So we'll start off by looking at the Euro. We'll compare the Euro with the GFS. And then we'll compare other things too. So the latest European from overnight last night takes us through 10 days out. I want to remind you, GFS goes through, I think, 15 days. So here comes our low that we kind of been talking about over the course of the last 15 minutes or so. This heads on out, becomes more of a story for Canada. And then we enter a period where we can get more of a moist feed across sort of the central and southeastern and mid-south portion of the country as we continue just to get kind of an El Nino type look where moisture continues to kind of override. And if you notice, the 540 line is beginning to dig down. So typically where you see around that 540 line and points south, that's where you start to see, that's where moisture is. And points north too. But in general, that's kind of where our dip, our trough is digging down. It's beginning to dig down. Okay? And as we continue to move forward into the weekend, I think, unfortunately, for you folks that, like warm weather, which we all can do for a nice warm February day sometimes. I think the areas that will be warm might be dealing with a lot of cloud cover and rain. Definitely not a sunny, warm day. And here it is, this is getting into Saturday and a Sunday, a lot of rain. But this low right here is the heavy topic. Okay, this low pressure begins to develop in Texas. There's enough cold air kind of crashing down into these areas, and it's snowing in the panhandle of Texas, snowing in areas of Oklahoma, but definitely not a big event by any means, and this could change. This could change, okay? Even though we're at this point only just past 100 hours, as we continue to move forward here, we're getting into Sunday evening. This is a pretty substantial low, even though at this point it's only 1,006 millibar low pressure. It's still a low that's beginning to gradually strengthen. So you take it up to Monday morning. It's around February 12th at this point. Low pressure beginning to track, and it's beginning to cut. Okay, there is some energy up here in the northern stream also we need to watch. And you keep this moving. This is all rain for the southeast. This was never a storm system that we were watching that had a chance for the southeast, for my folks tuning in. But stay tuned. There is something I'm watching. But you kind of keep this moving here, and we get all the way to Tuesday morning. What I want you to notice here on the Euro is this goes from 1,000 millibar low pressure Monday afternoon. This could change, not an exact forecast, but I do like the idea of a storm signal in this period. Look at how, I think this is showing beautifully on the surface. Look at this weak clipper system kind of moving in. That's northern stream energy. This is a massive southern stream energy. Look how they're about to work in tandem to kind of come together. I think this is a great surface value look to it that we can kind of understand. And watch what happens. 995 low, and then all of a sudden this goes to a 988 millibar low. Much stronger system. You're starting to have some phasing together of the northern stream and southern stream Tuesday morning. Now, you still don't have a lot of cold air, but you still have a strong low pressure. It's deepening. It's getting even stronger. Look at this snow trying to fall, and we can go on and kind of switch it to the eastern U.S. here. I knew it was going to do that. It's just a tale as old as time. And you kind of keep this going, and there it is, 988 low. Look at the snow falling in West Virginia, back in the mountains of North Carolina, Tennessee. And then you keep this going any further, you're still struggling with cold air. I don't think the really cold air from this pattern has really moved in yet, but could just be just enough. Look at southern New England. And guys, we're not talking about a storm 300 hours out at this point. Tuesday into Monday, we got to watch for this storm system. You got a 975 millibar low. That's a pretty strong storm system with a band of heavy wet snow hitting New York City to Boston. Okay, and then this moves on out. All right, we'll stop it with that one. And then same thing with the GFS, folks. We continue to get this moist feed between this storm system here and the one that's about to develop. So a lot of rain affecting your weekend plains across the south, even into the mid-Atlantic, the southeast, maybe even the northeast. And then now the GFS and the Euro are starting to agree. Remember, the GFS was like, I don't know if I'm going to buy this idea of a big storm like the Euro is showing. And all of a sudden, here comes this low. It's not as excited. It does show some snow in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, even a thin area of snow in Oklahoma and Kansas as we're getting into Sunday evening. But look as it deepens this low, a little bit of cold air crashing down. We can go on and switch it to the eastern U.S. at this point. Not a forecast Monday morning showing snow for northern Arkansas, areas of southern Missouri, southern Illinois. There's that low right there. Look at all this rain for the southeast. Very soggy start to your week next week. And the GFS is throwing more of a bone to areas of the Ohio Valley, northern Kentucky. Not a forecast. I know people get very annoyed with me saying that, but I just want y'all to understand I'm comparing model guidance. Okay, now we know there's a storm signal. It's just trying to figure out which one is going to be right. And, wants to dump, a pretty decent winter storm across the Ohio Valley. It has a 987 millibar low in West Virginia. Are we going to have a transfer of lows? And look how this high pressure sort of, you see how this low kind of stops going northeast and it sort of jumps more so east like that? At this point, you got a 974 millibar low right over like Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, this is around Tuesday morning, February the 13th. Look at this massive winter storm that GFS is trying to print for you guys over Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New York, and you're thinking in New York City, what is this going to do for us? Well, high pressure sort of bogs this down. Northern and southern stream energy phase together, and all of a sudden you have a blockbuster winter storm Tuesday morning. This is the latest GFS, folks, showing up for areas of the Northeast. You're thinking winter's over, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic or anything like that. But man, social media, the comments on YouTube, oof, they have been probably the most brutal that I've seen so far. And I know people say, Mitch, don't let it bother you. But when you're passionate about something and you talk about it, and it's tough to read sometimes. It definitely is. But that's what I'm called to do. Ignore that and just say, hey, thanks for watching. You know what I'm saying? But GFS and the Euro agree that there's a storm signal for early next week. Now, of course, the Euro not as going ham with it as the GFS, and I would always buy the more conservative route to avoid getting your hopes up. But let's see if both of these can meet in the middle. GFS, though, is showing big winter storm. Not even going to show you the snowfall accumulation from that because they'll probably be outrageous. Well, you know me, guys. I start to show that kind of stuff when we get closer. But that, just believe that is a huge winter storm if it was the way it was going to play out. Okay? And the storm signal is supported by the European Ensemble. Okay? Not just a fluke signal. This shows lower pressure and higher pressure. And here it is. You see, there goes our Canadian storm that kind of originates from the Rockies and cuts across into Canada. And then here comes our low signal down here in Texas. Here it comes. You see this big area of darker blue. Remember once upon a time we were talking and calling this the second storm system? It just had a kind of a lighter shade of darker blue. Now it's really dark. And as it starts to move, it really wants to cut across the Appalachian Mountains. And now that is a strong storm signal just off the coastline Monday night into next Tuesday morning. That is a strengthening storm signal here. What kind of cold air feed are you going to get? Okay, that's a big question. And we'll talk more about this tonight, but I think that the vortice map here on the GFS shows it beautifully. Once upon a time, when I say once upon a time, I'm talking about like a couple days ago, like yesterday. The models did not like the idea of the northern stream and the southern stream phasing together. Well, over the last several model runs, they do. And it's pretty easy to see what's going on here. You see this very amped up area right here, sort of the reds and the yellows and the oranges. And then you see more of, the yellows and the oranges up here. The northern stream energy typically is weaker than the southern stream energy. But watch as they kind of are working together and working in tandem. And then they get together, hook up, and then look how they kind of combine with one another. And that's why this thing really is showing on the models it blowing up kind of over the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast now. Watch as they come together. Watch this energy, and watch as they become one. That's what's going on. Okay, so you ask Mitch, what about snow? Okay, I'm going to show you the European Ensemble. The European Ensemble is going to show you 48-hour kind of periods. Okay, and here it comes. There's the signal for like Texas, the south central U.S., and I would say the European Ensemble shows a pretty solid signal if you're in the panhandle of Texas. The southern Rockies, Denver, even throws a bone for you folks in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. And then look how the signal sort of rides and moves northeast and then heads on out. Okay, let's back it up and let's look at the GFS ensemble for the same storm. And what is it showing? Let's get in here. Here it is. I know I'm going to have to do this 24-hour periods. Remember, I think I mentioned this before, the GFS ensemble does not do 2-day periods in snow. I wish it did, only 24 periods. So it's going to look a little bit different. But it really isolates that signal better. Here's the signal for the south central U.S. and the plains. Pretty solid signal for the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. Kind of skirts it across Oklahoma as we're getting into the later portion of this weekend into Monday morning. And there's the signal for northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, getting into Illinois. And then it heads on out. And then we'll show you the eastern U.S. right now. European Ensemble for the eastern U.S. Here comes that signal. You see there's a little bit of a signal for the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. Not super high. It really explodes as we get into the Northeast. And I'll admit, the European Ensemble does not support that outrageous signal from the GFS. The European Ensemble says, this is going to be more so a Northeast hit, New England, but it does get louder into the southern New England region, even gets down to New York City, but this is a loud signal for the Northeast. Okay, and then this heads on out. All right. What about, let's go on and back it up here. What about the GFS ensemble for this signal? Let's see what it looks like. And remember, this is in 24-hour periods. It's going to isolate that signal a little bit better. And here it comes. And there's a signal for the Midwest and areas of the Ohio Valley. I mean, even a signal into areas like Northwest Tennessee. And then there's that signal for the Northeast. And I can tell you, that, the GFS ensemble does not support its operational room, which is what I showed you. And you're thinking, what does that mean, Mitch? Well, it means that, it really favors more of an inland scenario for the Northeast, sort of a interior Northeast, interior New England kind of look. So if you're in the big cities, I don't think this is going to be your storm in Washington, D.C. or Baltimore, even Philadelphia. I think if you're in New York City, I think you watch this heavily. I think if you're in Boston, I think you got a chance to see something. I just don't know if this is going to be your substantial storm. This is right when the pattern change is coming in place, and you don't have a lot of cold air to work with. But we'll have to watch. Okay, definitely some interesting runs overnight to this morning. So what about after this? Remember, the European only goes out 10 days. It doesn't get to that period that I'm really favoring. But we'll get into Valentine's Day. Okay, we're done with that storm signal. It heads on off, right? That's that one we just broke down. What happens after that? Well, I think we have another push of cold air that comes down. The European shows a really aggressive looking northern stream energy. It looks like a piece of, like a clipper that rides down with this next push of cold air. Does this happen? I'm not sure. I'm really not. This is about 8 to 9 days out, but wants to deliver kind of a system. Does this try to do something? We're not sure. But what I want you to really focus in on is that 540 line right here. This is cold air. Well, you see all these blue lines, cold air diving down. And you see this big blob of moisture in Mexico and areas of Texas? That is our southern stream starting to get hyper, starting to get excited. And this is kind of ready to move into this colder air. But will it? Is it going to be suppressed? All we know is the end of the Euro, the last couple of days of the Euro, you get a big cold air push with high pressure moving in into the central and eastern U.S. This is a big cold air push coming in right into the 15th, 16th, and 17th. You got moisture waiting for it to be tapped into. Now, the GFS, of course, goes past 10 days. There's our storm signal we just broke down for you folks. And then we start to get, day 8, day 9, a little bit of a delay with the push of this cold air than what the Euro is showing. This is what the GFS is showing, but it's still coming. This allows for the moisture to kind of move in a little bit further north, and you kind of keep this going. Here's the cold air coming down. Here's a low. This is getting just past 10 days, and all of a sudden, you got a low right in here, and we'll go on and zoom into this. I mean, look at this. You got some snow showing up in Texas. What I want you to see here is, and models are starting to show this more and more. I'm going to be very interested once we get into the European range what it starts to show, which will be here in the next day or two. But this is the signal after 10 days. Shows that time period we've been watching. I've always said around the 20th onward, but as we've kind of been working our way through this, I began to like the 18th through the 20th a little bit better for something. But sure enough, we get into the afternoon of the 17th. We got a big storm system moving in. Cold air is coming in at the same time. We got a 980. What is that? That looks like a 989, maybe 999 low. Can't tell. It's kind of muffled here, but shows a big time southern Appalachian snowstorm and mid-Atlantic snowstorm. So that's a huge hit, and I mean it even oozes into North Carolina. It's not a forecast, folks, but there's a signal right there, a big signal. And what happens after that, who knows? Big cold air comes down, and we don't know what happens after that. We don't. But you look at the European ensemble signal off that, which is pretty far off. Okay, we get past 10 days, we can start to get closer to that 18th, 19th time frame, and there's the signal off the European ensemble, which, by the way, is the best signal for areas of the Southeast that we've seen so far. The ensemble hasn't really been biting on this, but it even has a signal all the way into Georgia and the Carolinas. This is just a signal. This is not a forecast. But there's that signal from that second storm system that I think we'll be talking about a lot more once we get over the next several days. Now, what about, the GFS ensemble with this other storm signal? And, we'll have to, this is still running right now, but I think this will come into the period we need to watch. And, there it is. We're 10 days, 17th, getting into the morning of 17th, and there it is. There's that signal right in here for that next storm signal. It's a little bit further south, okay? There's a signal right in here. It really gets loud here in the upstate of South Carolina, North Georgia, but there is some sort of signal there and to the Piedmont, North Carolina. So it's just something we watch, folks. I think we can call the storm signal early this coming week, storm signal number 1. And I think that's going to happen. It's just figuring out who's going to see what. And this is storm signal number 2. Okay. After that, there's no point in really talking about it. As far as temperatures, we know it's going to cool down, folks. I mean, we know that's going to happen. The big question is it going to get cold enough for snow? I know. When we get to mid to late February, we're working against the favorable climate period, meaning your average high temperatures begin to rise, average low temperatures begin to rise, sun angle. I get all of that. But we can still get a winter storm pretty far south in late February, March. Is Mitch saying that's going to happen? I am not. But I am saying that it can happen. I think people know that. I think you guys know that. For example, I think like March 3rd or 4th is the snowiest day of the year in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's skewed by one gigantic winter storm in like March of 1960. But still, you get the point. It can happen. But I think as we get into around Valentine's Day next week, I think that's when we start to cool down. And as you can tell, the 15th, the 16th, 17th, 18th, I mean, going all the way into the February 20ish range. Below average temperatures kind of move in and stay in for the long run. And I mean, you can see this. This is the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook from the 14th to the 20th. Confidence has increased. This was issued yesterday. We're up to now, what is this? A 60 to 70% chance of below average temperatures in this time period. So, I mean, it's not really discussing whether the pattern change is coming anymore. It's no doubt coming. The next thing you figure out, are we going to get some sort of winter storm out of it for any given location? So, that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. We will do this again tonight. I won't leave you guys hanging. But thank y'all for everything. Y'all have a fantastic Wednesday, and I'll talk to you soon.